Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepless Scientist, a quiet corner of the cosmos where your thoughts can unwind and knowledge becomes a soft lullaby for the night. Tonight, we'll drift gently into one of the most mysterious questions ever asked. Is the past and future happening now? It's a question that sounds almost like a riddle, yet it has been whispered through physics, philosophy, and even the quiet rhythms of your own mind. But before you settle in and get cozy, I'd love if you could take a moment to like this video and subscribe, only if you truly enjoy these slow, starlit explorations. And when you're ready, feel free to leave a comment telling me where in the world you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. It's always such a joy to see the places we gather from, each person resting in their own little slice of time. So if you'd like, dim the lights, let the room grow a little softer, maybe let a fan hum in the background, take a slow breath, and let yourself drift as we begin our gentle journey into the nature of time, memory, and the quiet illusion of now. And if your mind begins to wander at any point, that's perfectly fine. Let it wander. We'll still be here, unfolding the story calmly, step by step. You're sitting here tonight, listening, breathing, letting the day dissolve a little, and you might notice something subtle happening inside your mind. There is a sense that this moment right now is the one standing at the very edge of time. The past feels like it has slipped behind you, like the fading scent of something warm left on a table. The future feels like it is waiting ahead, just out of reach, as if hidden behind a thin curtain you can almost see through. And in between those two stretches lies this small, flickering instant that we call the present. But what if that sense, the feeling that now, is a thin point separating what has happened from what has not yet happened, is less like a truth of the universe and more like a story your mind tells to keep the world feeling organized? Imagine a memory you hold dearly. It could be something simple, the sound of rain on a childhood window, a conversation that made you laugh, a dinner with someone you haven't seen in years. If you bring that moment to mind, notice how vividly it returns. The way the room looked, the warmth of a lamp or the expression on someone's face. For a brief instant, the memory doesn't feel like a distant island in time. It feels present. It feels like something your mind is stepping into right now, as if the past had quietly opened its door again. And now imagine a moment in your future. Maybe a trip you hope to take, a dream you want to reach, something as ordinary as a meeting tomorrow morning. When you picture it, your mind constructs it so clearly, the place, the people, the imagined atmosphere, that it has a kind of presence too. A presence built from expectation, hope, or habit. Your brain prepares for the future by rehearsing it, sketching it gently in advance. In both cases, memory and anticipation, your mind is creating experiences right now. The past is being rebuilt, the future is being simulated, and both, in different ways, feel real. If you look closely, your mind is already showing you that the present is not a single point, but something more like a soft, wide field where pieces of yesterday and pieces of tomorrow mingle together. This is where the question becomes quietly intriguing. If your mind is capable of blending moments, of holding the past and the future inside the present, then what truly separates now from everything else? Is the present simply the moment you are aware of? Or is it something deeper, something woven into the fabric of the universe? Think of standing beside a river. When you look at the water, you have the feeling that it is always flowing, that each drop is moving forward, carried by a current it cannot resist. Time often feels like that river, a force pulling everything onward. But if you step back just a little, you realize that the sense of movement is in your perspective, not in the river itself. Each drop of water simply exists in its place. It is only because your eyes are fixed on one spot that you see motion. Some philosophers have suggested that the flow of time might be similar. Perhaps moments do not move any more than the pages of a book move. Each page is simply there, written and waiting, arranged in a sequence that only comes alive when you turn them. What you experience as the present might simply be the page your consciousness is touching right now. The rest of the story, the chapters behind and ahead, remain just as real, simply unread at this moment. This isn't a claim that your future is fixed like ink on paper. It's an invitation to notice how your sense of now is constructed, how it sits between memory and imagination. The human mind does not hold only the present. It works with threads from everywhere, from old days, from hopes, from fears, from experiences stored deep inside, and weaves them into a single moment of awareness. If you pause and listen to your breath, you may notice how time softens. You don't hear a ticking clock inside your head. You don't feel discrete seconds snapping into place. Instead, your awareness spreads out slightly, like a warm light that touches the near past and the near future together. The now becomes a gentle blend, a small interval rather than a razor-thin instant. This soft blending gives us the freedom to consider a possibility. Maybe the present does not stand alone. Maybe it isn't a narrow doorway, but a window that opens onto a landscape of moments. Some remembered, some imagined, some unfolding, all held together by the quiet work of your mind. And perhaps, by exploring this landscape, we can begin to understand why so. Many physicists and philosophers have dared to wonder whether the past, present and future may not be separate at all, whether they might exist together in a deeper sense, woven into the same fabric, waiting for our awareness to touch them. For tonight, we'll simply rest with this thought. The feeling of time flowing like a river may be one of the most beautiful illusions we experience. And as we wander further into the nature of time, you might find that the universe tells a story far stranger and far gentler than the one we usually tell ourselves. If you rest for a moment and let your attention soften, you might notice something almost hidden beneath the surface of your thoughts. The present moment isn't as thin or sharp as we usually believe. It doesn't feel like a single, precise point dividing what has already happened from what has not. Instead, it feels more like a gentle stretch, a small, breathing space where several moments overlap. The more quietly you observe it, the more you realize that now is not a line. It is a small room you inhabit, and inside that room, the past and the future leave their fingerprints. When you listen to a sentence being spoken, you don't only hear the final word. You hold the beginning of the sentence in your mind, carrying it with you as each new sound arrives. If you didn't, language would break apart into disconnected noises. This means that your awareness always reaches slightly backward, gathering the last few seconds of experience and keeping them alive so the world feels continuous. Neuroscientists sometimes describe this as a temporal window, which simply means the brain blends a short stretch of time into a single moment of perception. But you don't need the term. You can feel the blending happening right now as each word settles into place. And just as the mind reaches into the near past, it also leans gently toward the near future. Even while listening, you anticipate the next word, the next idea, the next breath. This isn't a conscious prediction. It's something your mind does quietly, like a shadow that walks a half step ahead of you. Your brain is always guessing what will happen a moment later, adjusting your expectations as events unfold. Because of this, your present moment is not simply what is happening right now, it is also what you expect to happen next. Memory on one side and anticipation on the other weave together to create what you call the present. Consider even the simple act of walking. You don't think about each step as an isolated action. Your mind holds the memory of the last step, predicts the movement of the next, and integrates them into a smooth experience so the world feels continuous. If your mind did not mix past and future so effortlessly, your walk would feel disjointed, like stepping on broken tiles instead of a steady path. This blending becomes even clearer when you think about music. Take a melody. you love. The present moment of hearing it always contains the notes that came just before and the expectation of the notes to come. If someone played the melody one note at a time with long pauses, you wouldn't recognize it. The beauty of music lies in the way your mind holds a sequence inside a single moment, like a small constellation of sounds. The present is not an instant, it is a span, a soft flowing interval that embraces what just happened and what is about to happen. Everyday life reveals this blending in countless little ways. When you reach out to catch a falling object, your hand moves not because you saw the object in its past position, but because you predicted its future path. When you read the expression on someone's face, you are recalling the subtle movements that led to that expression and using them to anticipate what might come next. Even the act of turning your head toward a sound involves a mixture of memory and prediction, woven so seamlessly that it feels like a single, fluid moment. This blending is not a flaw in your perception. It is what makes perception possible. A razor-thin present, something truly instantaneous, would be meaningless to consciousness. It would be like seeing the world through an endlessly flickering strobe light. Instead, your brain softens time, smoothing it into a warm and livable texture. It creates a present that has depth, like a small pool where events collect before drifting away. This deepens the mystery of why the present feels so real. If what you call now contains pieces of the past and small echoes of the future, then your experience is already more like a tapestry than a single thread. You are living in a thick moment, not a thin one. A moment that gathers time around itself the way a candle gathers light. And there is something quietly beautiful about this. When you remember a cherished moment, a laugh with a friend, a sunset you watched in silence, the memory feels present because your mind is reconstructing it in the same space where you experience the world right now. And when you imagine a future that hasn't happened, your mind uses the same machinery of images, feelings and expectations that it uses to sense the world. The future, in its imagined form, becomes a visitor to the present as well. All of this suggests something important. The present is not a boundary. It is a bridge. The past reaches across it in the form of memory. The future reaches across it in the form of anticipation. Your mind stands in the middle, weaving both into a coherent experience of now. This bridge-like quality is not just a psychological phenomenon, it is part of the reason why the idea that all moments might exist together doesn't feel as strange as it first sounds. The way you perceive time is already a blend. It is almost as if your mind is showing you a reflection of something deeper, that the universe itself may not be divided as sharply as your language suggests. The distinction between before and after, between has happened and has not, becomes softer when you realize that your awareness naturally spans across both sides. You live always in a present that contains memories shaped by past states of the world and predictions shaped by possible future states. And even though the brain does not write equations or read symbols, this blending echoes something that physicists often point to. The laws of nature do not speak the language of flowing time. They describe events as parts of a larger whole, each moment resting quietly in its place. For tonight, it may be enough to notice this. Your experience of now is already more spacious, more layered, and more mysterious than it seems. And as we continue our gentle journey through the nature of time, we may find that this layered present, this thick, breathing moment, is one of the strongest clues that the past and future might be closer to the present than we think. When you think about your life, it's easy to picture it as a long, straight road stretching behind you and ahead of you. A path you've already walked, a path you're walking now, and a path you will walk in the future. It is such a familiar image that we rarely question it. We imagine the past as a quiet landscape receding behind us, the future as a hazy stretch in front, and the present as the stepping stone beneath our feet. Yet if you sit quietly for a moment and let that picture soften, another possibility begins to appear. A picture where your life is not a single line, but something wider, richer, more like a mosaic of moments spread across a vast surface. Imagine standing in front of a large mural made of thousands of small tiles. Each tile is a moment from your life. Some tiles glow brightly, like your happiest memories. Others are darker, representing difficult days or challenges you overcame. Some are nearly forgotten, small fragments of ordinary afternoons or quiet mornings you barely recall. But all of them exist in the same space, arranged together, forming the story of you. In this mosaic, the tile you're standing on right now, this quiet instant as you listened, is just one among many. It is special because it is the one you're aware of, the one your consciousness is touching. But it is not alone. Just behind it, tiles representing yesterday are still part of the image. Tiles representing last year, your childhood, your first love, your first heartbreak. They all remain, side by side, forming patterns you may not always see but that continue to shape the picture. And just as the past tiles remain, the future tiles exist in a different sense as well. They may not be fully coloured in yet. Their shapes might be faint outlines. But the possibilities they represent are also part of the mosaic. Think about future plans you've made, a place you want to visit, a project you hope to finish, a dream you quietly nurture. Each of these imagined futures is like a tile sketched lightly in pencil, waiting for colour. They are not blank spaces. They are seedlings of experience, still waiting for their moment. This way of imagining your life as a mosaic rather than a line helps us loosen the rigid boundaries between before, now, and after. It gives you space to consider the idea that time might not be a narrow tunnel, but something more like a landscape, a place with many regions, all of which coexist, even if you experience them one hill or valley at a time. A helpful everyday analogy is the photo gallery on your phone. Open it, and you'll see hundreds or thousands of moments, all arranged neatly. A birthday last year sits next to a sunset from 3 years ago. A meal you shared last month is only a few swipes away from a childhood photograph. These moments are not gone. They are stored, available, waiting for your attention. You experience them one at a time only because your mind, like your photo app, can only display one image in the foreground at any given moment. But the rest of the gallery still exists quietly in the background. In the same way, think of your life as a book on a shelf. The pages are all there, the early chapters, the middle ones, and the unwritten pages ahead. When you read a book, you experience the story page by page, but that doesn't mean the rest of the book stops existing. The chapter you finished doesn't vanish. The chapter you haven't read yet does not suddenly appear from nowhere. They are all part of the same bound volume. You simply move through them with your awareness. Time may be similar. The past doesn't vanish. It simply recedes from your current viewpoint. The future may not be created out of thin air. It may exist as a set of possibilities waiting to be realized. This doesn't require any heavy physics or complex mathematics to understand. You've already felt it in moments when a memory arrives, suddenly, so vividly that it feels present again. Or when a future possibility feels so real that your heart beats faster. Your mind is already capable of stepping across tiles of the mosaic, sometimes without warning. A scent can pull you into a summer afternoon from years ago. A familiar street can remind you of someone you haven't thought about in a decade. A single moment of imagination can carry you into a future that hasn't yet unfolded. If you widen the analogy even further, you can imagine the entire universe as a vast mural made of moments. Every event, the birth of a star, the fall of a leaf, the warmth of a campfire, is a tile in that cosmic mosaic. Your life is one thread woven through it, a path of awareness wandering across the surface. You experience the mural in a sequence because your consciousness moves step by step. But the mural itself, in its entirety, may be there all at once. This perspective isn't meant to diminish your experience of time. Instead, it invites you to appreciate that your life is not confined to a thin slice of existence. The present moment is richer than it seems, connected to many other moments not by strict boundaries, but by a gentle web of memory, anticipation, and possibility. You might think of each moment as a room in a house. You live mainly in one room at a time, but the other rooms still exist, waiting quietly in the background. And perhaps the most comforting part of this mosaic view is the sense of continuity it offers. You don't leave moments behind entirely. They remain part of the pattern that makes you who you are. And the future isn't a void. It is a collection of rooms you haven't yet stepped into, hallways you haven't yet walked down, colours that haven't yet been chosen for the mural, but they are there in some sense as outlines of what might be. By imagining your life this way, the idea that the past and future might exist in a deeper way becomes less intimidating and more intuitive. It aligns with the way your mind drifts between memories and expectations. It echoes the way physics describes time as part of a larger structure, and it prepares you gently for the next step in our exploration, where we will shift from this personal mosaic to the structure of time itself, the woven fabric of space and time that Einstein revealed. If you imagine the night sky above you as a vast, quiet canvas, you might picture stars scattered across it like distant lamps. For most of human history, people believed that space was simply the stage on which events unfolded, while time was the ticking rhythm that kept everything moving forward. Space was where things were. Time was when things happened. They were thought to be separate, like two different threads woven through the story of the universe. But then came a quiet revolution, not sparked not by explosions or experiments in giant laboratories, but by the thoughts of a single man walking back and forth in his mind, wondering what it might feel like to ride on a beam of light. Albert Einstein changed the way we see time by discovering something almost poetic. Space and time are not separate strands. They are woven together into a single fabric. We call it space-time, but you don't need to hold that word rigidly. You can imagine it as a soft cloth stretched across the cosmos, rippling gently as planets move and stars drift. In this cloth, the distance between two places and the passage between two moments are deeply connected, like the threads of a tapestry that cannot be pulled apart without unravelling the picture. Before Einstein, people believed that time ticked at the same pace everywhere, like a perfect clock beating in the centre of the universe. But Einstein imagined something different, something both simple and profound. He realised that the speed of light is the same for everyone, no matter how they are moving, and if that is true, then time cannot tick at the same rate for every observer. Otherwise, the light would not behave consistently. So instead of forcing light to change, Einstein allowed time itself to stretch and squeeze. This may sound like a difficult idea, but it becomes clearer if you picture a stretchy cloth. If you press down on one part of the cloth, the threads shift and rearrange themselves. In the same way, motion changes the way space and time arrange themselves around you. When you move quickly, especially when you move close to the speed of a light, time slows down for you compared to someone who is standing still. You won't feel it happening. Your heartbeat, your breathing, your thoughts would feel completely normal, but from the viewpoint of someone not moving with you, your moments would lengthen just slightly, like gentle ripples stretching across a pond. Scientists usually write this idea with symbols and compact equations, but for our journey tonight, we can soften them into words. Instead of saying time dilates, or pointing to a formula that relates speed and time, we can simply say this: the faster you move, the more gently time stretches for you. The universe adjusts its rhythm to keep the speed of light steady for everyone. It's almost like a quiet promise the cosmos keeps. No matter how fast you travel, the light around you will always keep pace. This realization leads to one of the most surprising consequences of Einstein's work. There is no single universal now. Imagine two people watching a lightning storm. One stands on a platform and the other sits on a fast-moving train passing by. A bolt of lightning strikes at each end of the platform. To the person standing still, the two strikes might seem to happen at the same moment. But to the person on the train, who is moving toward one strike and away from the other, the flashes will not appear simultaneous. One will reach their eyes earlier than the other. Neither person is wrong. They are simply slicing the fabric of space-time from different angles. You can think of these slices as different ways of laying your hand across a stack of papers. Tilt your hand slightly, and the surface you touch changes. In the same way, motion tilts your slice of space-time, creating a different version of what counts as now. This means there isn't a single shared present moment stretching across the universe. Instead, every observer carries their own now, shaped by how they are moving. If you imagine space-time as a fabric again, this makes perfect sense. There is no single thread running across the cloth that counts as the present. Instead, each observer draws their own path through the weave, and the pattern of their movement determines which threads feel simultaneous. This idea that there is no universal now is one of the keys to understanding why some physicists believe that all moments in time might exist at once. If you and I cannot agree on which events are happening right now, then the now loses its special universal meaning. It becomes something personal, like a shadow cast by our motion, and what we call the present may simply be the place where our consciousness is resting on the fabric. You can picture the universe like a great cosmic quilt. All the patches, the moments, exist on the quilt together. You move across the fabric, tracing a line from one patch to the next. Because you are conscious, you feel that journey as the flow of time. But the other patches don't vanish when you step away from them. They remain part of the quilt. Einstein did not claim that the future is fixed or that the past is frozen. He simply revealed that the structure of time itself is different from our everyday intuition. It is more flexible, more relational, more deeply intertwined with space than anyone had imagined. And if time can stretch and bend, if the universe does not choose one single present moment, then the idea that all moments coexist becomes less like a philosophical speculation and more like a natural consequence of this woven fabric. Tonight, as you breathe gently and let the world quiet around you, you might picture yourself lying on this cosmic cloth. Each breath, each memory, each hope is a point on its surface. And as your awareness drifts calmly along its threads, the story of the universe continues to unfold, not as a simple line, but as a vast interconnected tapestry where every moment has its place. If you picture yourself standing in a dark field on a quiet night, with no buildings and no noise except the soft rustle of wind through the grass, you might imagine a single lantern glowing gently in your hands. Its warm light spills outward, illuminating a small circle around your feet. Everything within that circle is clear. You can see the blades of grass, the texture of the soil, maybe even your own shadow stretching away behind you. But outside that circle, the world fades into darkness. You know more land exists beyond the glow, but it has not yet entered your awareness. This image is a simple way to begin understanding something physicists call a light cone, though we will avoid the mathematical language that usually accompanies it. A light cone is, at its heart, a way of describing which parts of the universe can affect you and which parts you can affect. But instead of thinking of cones or diagrams, you can think of the lantern. The light that reaches you from the past, from stars, from events, from everything that has sent information your way, is like the glow around your feet. It forms the part of the universe that can touch your present moment. And the light that you are sending outward, the light that will one day reach distant places, is like the expanding circle just beyond your lantern's reach. It represents the part of the universe your presence will eventually touch. Together, these two circles form what physicists describe as your past and future light cones. But to keep things soft and natural, you can simply think of them as the regions that are connected to you by the gentle travel of light. If something happens far enough away from you, so far that its light has not yet reached you, that event is not part of your present, no matter when it occurred by its own local clock. And if you do something now, lift your hand, speak a word, shine your lantern, it will take time for that influence to reach elsewhere. This delay means that the universe does not share one universal now. Every observer, every point in space has its own glowing circle of influence and awareness, shaped by the speed at which light travels. To understand why this matters, imagine two distant mountains. A flash of lightning strikes each mountain at what we might casually call the same moment. But for a traveller standing closer to the first mountain, the flash from that mountain will reach their eyes slightly sooner than the flash from the second, even if both bolts occurred simultaneously from the perspective of someone standing exactly between them. This difference in arrival time could make the traveller believe that one lightning strike happened before the other, but both travellers are correct. The world is not giving them conflicting facts. It is offering them different slices of the same reality shaped by their positions and motion. In this way, the idea of simultaneity, the notion that two events occur at the same now, becomes fragile. It shifts depending on where you are and how you move. What feels like right now to one observer might be the past or the future to someone else. This flexibility of now might feel strange at first. We're used to thinking of time as a single river, flowing the same way for everyone. But the universe treats time more like a fabric you can lay your hand upon at many different angles. When you tilt your hand, the surface you touch changes. In the same way, when you change your motion or your position, your slice of what counts as the present changes too. Imagine again the large cosmic quilt from the previous session. If you slide your hand across it at one angle, the pattern you feel beneath your palm will differ from the pattern felt by someone sliding their hand at another angle. Neither person is wrong. They are simply touching the fabric differently. In physics, motion changes the angle of your touch, creating different arrangements of what feels simultaneous. Now imagine something slightly more vivid. Visualize a tall tower with a window near the top. A friend stands at that window. Another friend waits on the ground below. Both friends drop identical stones at what they believe is the same moment. To you, watching from a distance, the stones might appear to fall together, but someone positioned closer to the higher drop might see the upper stone begin its fall a tiny bit later. Meanwhile, someone closer to the ground stone might see the lower one begin earlier. Each viewpoint produces a slightly different timeline. The universe accommodates all these viewpoints without contradiction. It simply doesn't enforce a single, absolute ordering of events across all space. When physicists express this idea symbolically, they highlight that time and space are intertwined so tightly that before and after change depending on where and how you observe. For us, we can translate this into a softer truth, the idea of a singular, shared now stretching across the cosmos begins to dissolve when we look closely. And something remarkable happens once we let this idea settle. If there is no single universal present, then what we call now is not a fundamental property of the universe itself. It is a property of our vantage point, of our motion, our place, our path through the cosmic fabric. Every observer has their own moving frame of reference, and their own shifting edge between past and future. This realization nudges open the door to deeper possibilities. If every observer carries their own now, then the universe might not privilege any one of these moments as the true present. Instead, all moments might exist on the fabric of space-time, waiting quietly for different observers to experience them. And if all moments exist in this way, then the past and future may be less like events that vanish and appear, and more like regions of a vast map through which consciousness travels. Of course, this doesn't mean that your future is fixed, or that your choices are illusions. It simply means that the structure of time itself may be more spacious than our everyday intuition suggests. You can imagine the universe as a landscape illuminated by countless lanterns, each lantern representing one observer, each observer carrying a slightly different circle of present moment awareness. The more lanterns you imagine, the clearer it becomes. There is no single global glow defining now. There are countless overlapping circles, each one meaningful to the observer who carries it, each one a window into the grand mosaic of moments. As you sit here tonight listening to this gentle reflection, you are holding one such lantern. The light that reaches you brings the world into your present. The light that has yet to arrive is simply waiting on the horizon. And somewhere in the quiet architecture of space-time, countless other moments rest undisturbed, each one with its own observer, its own glow, its own shifting edge of now. If you close your eyes for a moment and picture all the places you've ever lived, you might see them arranged like rooms in a long hallway. The home of your childhood, the place you stayed during your teenage years, the apartment or house you live in now. Each exists somewhere in your memory, each holding moments that once felt like the centre of your world. Those places do not vanish simply because you no longer live inside them. They remain grounded in space, unchanged by your movement from one room to the next. In a similar way, some physicists have suggested that time itself may include all its rooms at once, not only the one you are currently standing in. This idea, often called the block universe, does not ask you to imagine a frozen reality or a world without choice. Instead, it invites you to picture time as a grand architectural structure where every moment, past, present, and future, is like a room built into a towering cathedral. Each moment has its own place in the structure. You, as a conscious traveller, simply walk through the halls of this cathedral one room at a time, experiencing each as now, while the others remain quietly in place. To understand the block universe gently, without equations or symbols, imagine the entire timeline of your life laid out like a long film reel. If you hold that reel up to the light, you see every frame at once: birth, childhood, the present day, and the years still ahead. They all exist as pictures printed on the film. But when you play the reel through a projector, you experience those frames one after another, giving the illusion of motion. The movie feels alive, flowing, always changing, yet the reel itself never moves. All the moments are simply resting in their places. Einstein's work encouraged this perspective, not because he claimed time is frozen, but because the equations describing how space and time relate do not single out a privileged now. They treat all events, whether hours in the past or centuries in the future, as points in the same woven fabric. Physicists sometimes express this by saying that time is four-dimensional, which simply means it is part of the same structure as space. Instead of thinking of length, width, and height alone, we can add a fourth direction, time, and treat moments the way we treat locations. Described softly, it's like standing on a hill and looking down at a winding path that stretches across a valley. From above, you can see every twist and curve of the path at once, the beginning, the middle, and the end. But if you're walking along that path, you only ever experience one step at a time. The block universe suggests that the cosmos is something like the view from the hill, a vast panorama of moments that exist together, while your awareness provides the intimate step-by-step experience of living within them. For some people, this view feels comforting. If all moments exist in the structure of time, then nothing is truly lost. The laughter of childhood, the warmth of a long-gone afternoon, the faces of people you loved who are no longer here, all of these moments remain as part of the cosmic architecture. They do not disappear, they simply sit in different rooms of the cathedral. You cannot visit them the way you once did, but they have not been erased from the universe. For others, the block universe raises a more troubling question. If the future already exists in the structure, does that mean everything is predetermined? Are we walking a scripted path, unable to wander off the trail? The idea can feel unsettling, as if free will is a kind of illusion. But the picture is gentler than that. Think again of the film reel. Even though every frame of the movie physically exists on the reel, the characters within the story still make decisions that shape their world. Their choices are real inside the narrative, even if the entire story is printed from beginning to end. In the same way, your choices are real within the flow of your life. The block universe does not require a cold predestination. It simply suggests that the architecture of time may be larger and more complete than the part of it you perceive at any moment. Not all scientists agree with this view. Some feel that time must be fundamentally dynamic, that the future does not yet exist in any form, and that the universe is genuinely unfolding moment by moment. One alternative to the block universe is the growing block picture, which imagines that the past and present exist, but the future has not yet come into being. You can think of it like a diary still being written. Yesterday's pages are filled in. Today's page is being inked as you live it. Tomorrow's page remains blank. The story grows with each passing moment. This growing block idea preserves the feeling that something genuinely new is being created as time moves forward. It also aligns closely with our intuition that the future is open, full of possibilities rather than fixed events. In this view, the block of time is not a completed cathedral, but a living building still under construction. Walls rising, halls extending, rooms appearing as the universe evolves. And there are yet other perspectives. Some physicists, including thinkers like George Ellis and Lee Smolin, argue that time must be fundamentally real, not just a dimension in a structure, but a creative force that brings the world into existence moment by moment. Their view suggests that the universe is not a static building, nor a film reel waiting to be played, but a living organism growing and transforming. In this vision, your choices do not merely unfold on a pre-drawn path, they help create the future itself. When you place all these views side by side, the block universe, the growing block, and the idea of time as a fundamental creative force, what emerges is not contradiction, but a gentle recognition of mystery. The universe may be vast enough to carry truths we cannot yet fully grasp. Time may hold layers we have not yet reached. In the quiet of this moment, perhaps it is enough to consider that your life is part of something far larger and more intricate than a simple line. Whether time is a cathedral already built or a building still rising, you're walking its halls with your own light. Each step you take is real, each choice matters, and the story continues, one moment at a time, through a structure far more beautiful and expansive than the simple image of a ticking clock. If you imagine the world at its smallest scales, far smaller than dust, far smaller than cells, even smaller than the tiniest grain of starlight, you might picture a realm where the familiar rules begin to melt away. It is a place where particles do not behave like tiny marbles bumping into each other, but more like soft clouds of possibility drifting through an invisible sky. This is the quantum world, and though it rests beneath everything we see, its behaviour feels almost dreamlike when we try to describe it in everyday language. To approach it gently, you can picture a small, quiet room with two tiny doors on opposite walls. If you place an object like a marble in front of these doors, you expect it to choose one or the other. That is simply how things behave in our everyday world. An object must pick a path. But if you shrink that object until it becomes an electron, something strange happens. Instead of choosing one door or the other, the electron behaves as if it goes through both doors at once, like a whisper spreading through two hallways simultaneously. It is not that the particle splits, it is that the particle, before you look at it, exists in a haze of possibilities. This haze, this cloud of maybes, is what physicists call a superposition. But you don't need the term itself. You can think of it as a moment where reality is undecided, like a coin spinning in the air before it lands. While the coin spins, you cannot say whether it is heads or tails. It carries both possibilities at once. Only when the coin lands do you get a single answer. Quantum particles live in that spinning state much of the time. They are not simply here or there, moving or still, going left or right. They are all these possibilities woven together until something pushes them to settle. To describe this behaviour, physicists often write equations filled with symbols that look mysterious at first glance. These equations capture how the cloud of possibilities grows, shifts, and rearranges itself with time. But for tonight, we can translate all of this into a softer picture. The future of a quantum particle is like a forest path on a foggy morning. You can see only a few steps ahead, and many paths seem equally possible. As you walk, the fog thins just enough for one path to become real under your feet. But the other paths are still there in the mist, waiting to be chosen, or never chosen at all. This leads to something quietly profound. At the deepest level we can observe, the universe does not follow a rigid script. It offers a branching of possibilities, and only when things interact, collide, or are observed does one branch become the world we experience. The rest remain possibilities that could have been. In this way, the future is not a single line waiting for you. It is a soft cloud of maybe paths spreading outward from every moment. Consider something simple, like reaching for a glass on a table. You might think this is a purely classical action. Your mind makes the choice, your hand moves, the glass is lifted. But beneath that straightforward sequence lies countless quantum processes. The small particles inside your muscles, nerves, and brain are constantly swimming in these clouds of possibilities. The way they settle into specific actions, a hand moving left instead of right, a neuron firing a moment earlier instead of later, guides your decisions and movements through the world. This does not mean your choices are random or chaotic. It means that the building blocks of your actions have more flexibility than the objects you handle. The world inside you is full of potential bends and shifts. The future is not a fixed picture waiting to unfold. It is more like a field of gentle branching, shaped by both microscopic chance and the larger patterns of your consciousness. Imagine a tree standing in a peaceful forest. Every branch once grew from a point where many possible directions existed. The tree could have grown a new limb slightly to the left or slightly to the right. It could have stretched upward or curved outward. The final shape of the tree captures the sum of all the tiny decisions made as it grew toward the sunlight. The quantum world is similar. Every particle is like a young branch, full of potential directions, and the universe, as it evolves, becomes a vast tree whose shape reflects the way these possibilities gradually solidify. Yet even this analogy is only a whisper of how strange and gentle quantum behaviour truly is. In many ways, the quantum world suggests that the future is not something waiting at the end of a line. It is something constantly forming, like patterns in drifting fog. When scientists write their equations, they often show that the wave of possibilities spreads outward, combining and separating like ripples on a calm lake. But in spoken language, you can simply imagine a soft glow spreading from each moment, holding all the futures you could step into. This haze of possibilities becomes especially meaningful when you return to the question at the heart of our journey. Could the past and future be happening now? If the universe carries many potential futures at once, it hints at a world where time is not a single thread but a collection of intertwined strands. Some of those strands may never be followed. Others may become the story you remember one day, and all of them originate from the same quiet place, the moment you call now. The quantum world doesn't tell us that all futures exist in an absolute way. Instead, it tells us that the future, before it happens, is spacious. It is open. It is not a single hallway, but a corridor with many doors. When one door is chosen, when a possibility becomes real, the rest fade softly into the background. They were real as potentials, but not as events, like dreams that might have been dreamed but were not. And as strange as it sounds, this softness, this openness, may be one of the most beautiful features of the universe. It gives you room to move. It gives you room to choose. It gives you the ability to shape the unfolding of your life. Even if time has a larger structure, even if all moments have their place in the cosmic tapestry, the quantum world reminds us that the future is not rigid. It is made moment by moment from possibilities that resolve themselves into experience through your actions and awareness. In this way, the fog of quantum potential is not something distant or abstract. It is part of you. It is part of your thoughts, your memories, your decisions. And as you sit here listening tonight, you carry within you a small universe of maybes, waiting to become the next step on your path. There is a certain kind of morning light that filters through a forest in a way that makes every path look possible. If you have ever stood on a woodland trail just after sunrise, you may have noticed how the air glows softly between the trees and how every branching path seems to invite you down its own quiet story. If you turn left, you find one world. If you turn right, you find another. Yet for a brief moment, before you choose, all the paths feel equally real. They all exist in front of you, waiting. This feeling, the sense of standing at the edge of multiple possible journeys, is one of the closest everyday experiences we have to an idea that has stirred physicists for decades. The thought that the universe might not choose a single outcome when faced with a quantum possibility, but might instead allow every outcome to unfold somewhere. This idea is often called the many worlds interpretation, though we don't need the name itself to explore its meaning. We can simply imagine the universe as a forest full of branching paths, each one a different version of what might be. To understand this gently, we can return to the quantum world from the previous session. When a tiny particle exists in a superposition, that cloud of maybes, that soft mixture of possibilities, it does not settle into one option until something forces the question. In our everyday picture of the world, we simply assume the particle chooses a path the moment we observe it. But some physicists wondered, what if the universe itself never chooses? What if, instead of picking one outcome, it allows all outcomes to unfold in parallel, each one in its own quiet branch of reality? Picture a small stone dropping into still water. Waves spread outward in all directions, not just along a single line. The many worlds idea imagines something similar. When a quantum event occurs, the universe ripples outward along multiple outcomes. In one branch, the particle goes left. In another, it goes right. In yet another, something else happens entirely. You experience only one branch, but the others remain, like neighbouring trails in a forest you did not walk down. This can seem like an overwhelming idea, but it becomes gentler when we think about it through familiar experiences. Imagine you're reading a book with several alternative endings. Each ending describes a distinct future for the characters. Some endings are joyful, some are bittersweet, some are surprising. When you finish reading, you choose to close the book on one ending, but the other endings have not vanished. They remain printed on the pages, ready for anyone to read. They are part of the story's full shape, even if you experienced only one version. The many worlds picture asks us to consider that the universe might hold its own set of alternative endings, not as fantasies or fiction, but as different branches of a vast cosmic story. You're a character within one branch, walking your own path. But in the full tapestry of existence, there may be other branches where events unfolded differently. This does not mean that another you is making choices in some distant shadow. Instead, it means that every quantum possibility the universe allows may be realized in its own quiet version of reality. You experience the branch you're in. The other branches, like other pages in the book, remain part of the larger whole but outside your awareness. Some people find this idea unsettling, but it can also be surprisingly comforting. It suggests that the universe is full of richness, not a single pathway carved into stone, but a manifold of possibilities, each one a different expression of what could be. Just as a tree holds many branches, the universe might hold many timelines. You inhabit one branch, but the tree is greater than any single limb. Others argue that the many worlds picture may be more metaphor than truth, a way of describing quantum mathematics without claiming that countless worlds physically exist. In this gentler interpretation, the branching is simply a way to visualize the spread of possibilities before the universe settles on a definite outcome. Rather than literal new worlds forming, the branching becomes a poetic way of understanding quantum potential. Regardless of whether these branches truly exist or are only a way of seeing, the image they offer helps us understand something deeper about time itself. It suggests that what we call the future is not a single line waiting to happen. It is a network of possible moments spreading outward in subtle ways. Some of those possibilities will become your lived experience. Others will fade like unused paths in a forest. Imagine standing at a crossroads in your life, deciding whether to move to a new city, start a new relationship, or leave an old one behind. Each choice opens a different future. In the many worlds vision, all these futures might unfold in their own branches, but even in everyday experience, you can feel the branching long before anything actually happens. You can sense the weight of possibility in your chest, the awareness that your life can flow in more than one direction. The future stretches outward like a tree limb that has not yet decided where to grow. What does it mean then to live in this branching universe? Perhaps it means recognizing that your experience of reality is only one of the possible patterns the world can take. This does not make your life less real. It does not diminish the importance of your decisions. If anything, it highlights how extraordinary the present moment is. Out of all the paths the universe could take, you are walking this one. This unique thread, shaped by your choices, your memories, your awareness. And as you move forward, your future narrows from a cloud of possibilities into the single lived path beneath your feet. The other possibilities, if they exist at all, remain like distant branches you cannot reach. What remains is the one true moment you inhabit, the one you are living right now. This perspective, like all the ones we have explored, does not claim to reveal the final truth about the universe. It simply offers a way to think about time that is spacious, imaginative, and quietly profound. It invites you to picture your future not as a single narrow tunnel, but as a landscape of choices, each one meaningful in its own way. For tonight, it may be enough to imagine yourself walking through that forest. The paths branching around you are soft possibilities. The path beneath your feet is your present. And somewhere deep in the quiet architecture of reality, the universe holds a richness of moments far greater than the single thread you can see. Imagine holding a snow globe in your hands. When the globe rests still, all the little flakes settle quietly at the bottom, each one in its place. But the moment you shake it, the entire scene transforms. Snow swirls, glitters, drifts, and finally settles again in a new arrangement. Something similar happens in the quantum world when we observe it. Before we look, the tiny particles are like flakes floating in a snow globe, suspended in a gentle haze of possibilities. But the moment we interact with them, even in the smallest way, the world seems to settle into one clear outcome. This settling has led many thinkers to wonder what exactly counts as looking, and whether consciousness plays a role in choosing the version of reality we experience. To explore this softly, without any technical jargon, we can imagine a simple scene. A quiet room with a closed curtain. Behind the curtain, something is happening. It might be one thing, it might be another. We do not know. And until we open the curtain, the room behind it exists only as a blend of possibilities in our mind. When we finally pull the fabric aside, the scene becomes definite. At that point, we no longer picture multiple outcomes. One becomes real. The others fade like dreams we never dreamed. Physicists use this analogy when talking about the measurement problem, but we don't need the term itself. All we need is the idea. Before we observe certain things in the quantum world, they behave like a mix of maybes. When we interact with them, the universe shows us a clear answer. It is as if, at the smallest scales, the world hesitates between many forms, waiting for a nudge to settle into one. But what is doing the settling? Is it the act of observing itself? Is it the physical interaction between our measuring tools and the particles? Or is it something deeper, something related to consciousness? Different perspectives exist, and each offers a slightly different way to think about how the haze of quantum possibility becomes a single experience. Some scientists believe the world settles into definite outcomes because physical objects, like detectors or atoms, bump into each other in specific ways. In their view, it is the interaction alone that chooses the outcome, and consciousness simply comes later to witness the result. Others wonder whether consciousness might play a more central role, whether the act of being aware of something could influence how the possibilities become reality. This idea is not universally accepted, but it continues to echo softly in discussions about time perception and the way the universe unfolds. It raises a question that we do not yet know how to answer. If consciousness is the lens through which we experience a single timeline, could it somehow shape which timeline we land on? To explore this without drifting into speculation, we can think instead about how consciousness shapes experience in everyday life. For example, consider a moment when you walk into a room filled with people. Your senses take in a vast amount of information: voices, gestures, background noise, colours, movements. But you do not receive this information all at once. Instead, your attention selects one stream to focus on. You might listen to a specific voice, notice a particular face, or pay attention to one conversation among many. In that moment, your awareness selects one version of the room for you to experience most clearly, while the others fade into the background. The quantum world may operate in a vaguely similar way. Instead of one physical outcome being chosen because consciousness demands it, our conscious experience might simply be one thread through a much richer tapestry of possibilities that the universe contains. We become aware of one outcome, and that outcome becomes the story we remember. The rest, like background noise in a crowded room, drift softly out of focus. You can also imagine consciousness as a spotlight on a stage. The stage holds many props, actors, and scenes, but the spotlight can shine on only one moment at a time. Wherever the light falls becomes the center of experience, yet the rest of the stage continues to exist, full of details you cannot see clearly until the spotlight shifts. In this way, consciousness shapes your journey through time. It highlights one event, then the next, then the next. It experiences reality as a sequence, even if the deeper structure of time is broader than that. Another gentle image is a camera moving through a gallery. The gallery might contain paintings arranged in a wide room, but the camera's lens captures only a small frame at any moment. The camera's path creates a sequence of images that feel like a story, yet the paintings all exist simultaneously on the walls. Your consciousness might function like that moving lens, gliding across the landscape of moments, turning a static arrangement into a lived experience. This does not mean consciousness creates time, but it may help explain the feeling of time flowing, even if the deeper structure is still. This brings us to a subtle but important idea. Even if quantum possibilities are real, and even if the universe holds many paths, your consciousness still experiences time as a thread. You see one outcome at a time. You remember one history. You anticipate one future. This thread becomes the fabric of your identity, connecting all your moments into a single story that feels coherent and meaningful. It also means that the choices you make matter, not because they decide the fate of countless worlds, but because they shape the path you walk in this one. Whether or not other possibilities unfold elsewhere, your awareness travels through a specific string of moments, one breath at a time. This is your timeline. This is your version of reality. This is the story you inhabit. And perhaps this is the most profound aspect of consciousness. It does not need to collapse every possibility in the universe. It does not need to control the quantum world. It simply needs to gather your experiences into a narrative that feels whole. It takes the scattered fragments of memory, sensation, and imagination and weaves them into something steady enough for you to call the present. As you sit here listening, you can feel the delicate way consciousness works. You're aware of this moment not because the universe forces it upon you, but because your attention rests gently on it. Your thoughts may drift, your mind may wander, but each time you return, you find yourself anchored again in the flow of awareness. And in this flow, time feels continuous, even if, beneath the surface, it is shaped by a dance of possibilities that we are only beginning to understand. If you look around your room right now, you might notice a quiet pattern that creeps into everyday life. A freshly cleaned desk slowly gathers papers, cups, and little objects that do not quite have a home. A neatly folded blanket ends up tossed over the back of a chair. A drawer that once closed smoothly begins to resist because you've tucked one too many things inside. You almost never wake up to find the opposite has happened on its own. The messy drawer does not spontaneously organise itself overnight. The scattered papers do not march back into tidy piles. The world, left to itself, tends to drift from order into disorder. This gentle tendency toward messiness is one of the simplest ways to glimpse a deep idea in physics, the idea of entropy. The word sounds technical, but we can soften it into something easier to hold. Entropy is, in a sense, a way of counting how many different arrangements a system can have without looking special. A highly ordered system, like neatly stacked books on a shelf, has only a few ways to be arranged without spoiling the pattern. A messy system, books scattered everywhere, has many more possible arrangements that all look equally jumbled. The more ways something can be rearranged without changing how it looks, the higher its entropy. Think of a tidy room at the start of the week. Everything is in its place. The bed is made, the desk is clear, the floor is empty. There are not many configurations of objects that would keep it looking exactly that neat. Now, imagine the same room after several busy days. Clothes have migrated to the chair, a few mugs are lined up near the computer. Receipts, keys, and headphones are scattered across the table. There are countless ways you could move those items around and still call the room messy. Without you deliberately tidying, it is far more likely for the room to drift into one of the many messy states than to stay in the small set of perfectly ordered states. Entropy captures this tendency in a single idea. The universe naturally leans towards states that can be realized in many different ways. It does not mean order is impossible. It just means that order requires effort, the effort of cleaning, organizing, and paying attention. Disorder happens on its own because there are simply more ways to be disordered than to be pristine. You can see the same pattern in a drop of ink falling into a glass of water. At first, the ink is concentrated in a small region, forming a distinct shape. As time passes, the ink spreads, twisting into delicate threads, then dissolving into a uniform tint. The water and ink become more mixed, more evenly distributed. It is easy for the ink to spread out. There are many arrangements of tiny ink particles that all look like a uniform colour, but you never see the process reverse by itself. The water does not suddenly gather all the ink back into a sharp, concentrated drop hovering in the middle of the glass. The mixed state has high entropy. The concentrated state has low entropy. Left alone, the system drifts toward the higher entropy, more mixed state. Or picture a scoop of ice cream placed on a warm plate. At first, it holds its shape, cold and firm. Slowly, it melts, spreading into a glossy puddle. Heat flows from the warmer plate into the colder ice cream, softening it, breaking down its structure until it becomes liquid. Again, you never see the reverse. The melted puddle does not spontaneously gather itself into a neat scoop and chill down. The direction is always from structured to less structured, from concentrated coolness to an even spread of warmth. These simple scenes, the messy room, the ink in water, the melting ice cream, are all reflections of one deep principle. In closed systems, entropy tends to increase. The universe does not forbid low entropy ordered states. It simply makes them rare and fragile. High entropy, disordered states are far more common and stable. That is why you see glasses shatter far more often than you see shards assemble themselves into a glass. It is not that the laws of motion would strictly forbid a glass from forming. It is that the chance of all the shards moving in just the right way at just the right time is unimaginably small. The paths leading toward disorder vastly outnumber the paths leading back to perfection. This natural leaning toward higher entropy gives time a direction. If you filmed a glass falling, hitting the floor and shattering, you could tell in an instant whether the film was playing forward or backward. The shattering, the flying fragments, the spreading debris, these are all signatures of entropy increasing. If you saw instead a scattered pile of glass fragments leaping into the air and assembling into a perfect glass that rose gently onto a table, you would immediately know the video was running in reverse. The laws of physics describing the motion of the fragments could run either way, but the trend in entropy tells you which way is real. The same is true when you watch ice cubes melting in a drink, or a drop of cream swirling into coffee. Forward in time, order relaxes into disorder, patterns blur, differences even out. Backward, everything would look uncanny. The coffee separating from the cream, the ice cube forming itself from scattered droplets of water. Your intuition is quietly tracking the direction in which entropy grows, and that direction becomes what you naturally call the future. In this way, entropy offers a physical foundation for the arrow of time. It gives us a way to define before and after that is rooted not in our feelings, but in the behaviour of matter and energy. Before is the direction in which entropy was lower. After is the direction in which entropy is higher. The arrow of time is not drawn by a cosmic clock, but by the universe's tendency to move from the rare and special toward the common and mixed. And if we step back even further, beyond rooms and glasses and ice cream, we might ask, why could entropy increase at all? What gave the universe so much room to become more disordered over time? To answer that, we have to look at the very beginning, at a moment when the cosmos itself was in an extraordinarily simple and low entropy state, like a perfectly kneaded dough before it rises. From that special beginning, all the richness and complexity we see today could gradually unfold. For now, as you sit in your own room, perhaps noticing a little disorder creeping in at the edges, you can think of entropy as a quiet companion to your days. It is there in the way dust gathers, in the way heat spreads, in the way carefully arranged moments diffuse into memory. It is not an enemy to be fought, but a sign that time has direction, that change is real, and that every moment has its own unique place in the unfolding story of the universe. If you imagine the universe as a vast storybook, you might picture its earliest page as almost blank, not in the sense of nothingness, but in the sense of a clean, smooth sheet of paper with no wrinkles, no scribbles, no crowded textures. It was a moment so simple, so uniform, that it barely resembled the richly detailed cosmic landscape we see today. And yet, that simple beginning was precisely what allowed the universe to unfold into stars, galaxies, planets, oceans, forests, and eventually your own life. To understand this gently, imagine a bowl of dough resting in a warm kitchen. When the dough is first kneaded, it is smooth, tight, and remarkably uniform. There are no bubbles, no pockets, no lumps. But as time passes, tiny variations begin to appear. Air pockets form, the dough expands, patterns emerge. In its earliest state, the dough contains no complexity, and because of that, it has the potential for complexity to grow. The universe, in its first moments, was like that dough, incredibly smooth, incredibly ordered, surprisingly simple. Physicists often describe the early universe as hot and dense, but the more surprising part is that it was also incredibly even. The temperature barely varied from one region to another. This smoothness is what scientists mean when they say the universe began in a low entropy state. It wasn't empty, it was full of energy, but that energy was arranged in an elegant, uniform way that carried very little disorder. There were not many ways to rearrange it without changing its appearance. In the language we've been using, the early universe didn't look messy. It looked like something carefully arranged. Because the early universe was so uniform, entropy, the measure of how many jumbled arrangements are possible, had a vast amount of room to grow. Just as dough can rise into many shapes, the early cosmos could unfold into an astonishing variety of structures. Tiny fluctuations in temperature eventually grew into the seeds of galaxies. Vast clouds of matter slowly gathered under gravity, forming stars that lit up the darkness. Planets condensed from swirling dust, cooled, hardened, and began to host their own storms, oceans, and landscapes. Complexity arose piece by piece because it had the freedom to do so. If the universe had started in a high entropy state, one already thoroughly mixed and jumbled, there would have been little room for structure to form. Stars might never have ignited, galaxies might never have spun into being, and the long story of cosmic evolution might have never begun. But because the universe started in that elegant low-entropy configuration, the arrow of time could stretch forward, carrying the cosmos from smooth beginnings toward rich, intricate patterns. You can visualize this unfolding as a long climb from simplicity into complexity. Picture a vast plain at dawn, blank and empty. As the sun rises, you begin to see small shapes forming: hills, rivers, forests, valleys. The landscape becomes richer, more detailed, more textured with each passing moment. The early universe was like that plain. Over billions of years, the cosmos carved itself into the magnificent structures we see today. Great spiraling galaxies, clusters of stars, planets with weather and seasons, ecosystems with creatures and minds capable of reflection. At the heart of this transformation lies entropy. As the universe expanded, it cooled, allowing matter to cluster. In those clusters, entropy increased as broken symmetries formed, as stars burned their fuel, and as energy flowed from hot to cold. The arrow of time, the sense in which the universe moves forward, is written into these processes. Heat radiates outward, structures collapse under gravity, light escapes from stars and spreads across space. Each of these motions pushes the universe further along its path from an exquisitely simple beginning toward a more disordered, more spacious, more complex future. Today, we find ourselves living on a small island of order floating in a much larger sea that is slowly drifting toward disorder. Our planet is warm enough and cool enough, balanced brilliantly in between extremes, to allow life to flourish. Plants gather sunlight. Oceans circulate heat. The atmosphere protects us gently from cosmic cold. But this balance is temporary, resting on the flow of energy from the hot center of the sun to the cooler reaches of space. This difference in temperature, this gradient, is what allows the complexity of life to persist. If everything were the same temperature, nothing would happen. No winds, no storms, no seasons, no growth. Entropy's arrow guides not only the cosmos, but also our own existence. We remember the past because physical traces remain. Footprints in dust, photos in albums, fading scents on familiar clothing. scars that record old wounds. The future does not yet have traces. It leaves no footprints to discover. That is why memory works backward, never forward. This asymmetry, records accumulating in only one direction, is another expression of the universe's initial simplicity. The cosmos began in a state where the patterns that would become records simply had not yet formed. If you think about time as a hallway, the past is filled with open drawers, each one containing memories, events, and records of what has already happened. The future hallway has drawers too, but they are all closed, empty, waiting to be filled. As you walk forward, you fill them one by one. The arrow of entropy ensures that only the drawers behind you contain traces. The drawers ahead are not yet written. In the grandest sense, this means that the arrow of time, the direction we feel ourselves moving, is built into the universe not because time flows like a river, but because entropy grows like a rising tide. We live in the gentle middle of this tide, watching patterns emerge and dissolve, knowing that the movement from order to disorder gives shape to everything we experience. And as the universe continues to expand, this story only grows deeper. Galaxies drift apart, stars burn their fuel. Slowly, quietly, the cosmos transforms, guided by the same principle that makes ink spread in water or ice cream melt on a warm plate. And yet, despite the inevitability of entropy, our small island of order continues to generate new patterns: life, thought, creativity, wonder. Now, as we reach the end of this chapter, we find ourselves standing on the threshold of another question. How does this cosmic arrow connect to the most intimate arrow of all, the one inside your own mind? If entropy shapes the structure of the universe, does it also shape the structure of memory, perception, and the feeling of time passing? And so we step gently from the vastness of the early cosmos into the quiet architecture of consciousness, where the arrow of time becomes something deeply personal. If you close your eyes for a moment and let your thoughts drift, you may notice how naturally your mind reaches backward. Memories arrive like gentle visitors, a conversation from earlier today, a childhood moment, the face of someone you miss, the warmth of a sunny afternoon you once knew. These memories feel like stepping stones behind you, each one solid and familiar. Yet no matter how hard you try, you cannot summon a memory of tomorrow. You can imagine tomorrow, predict tomorrow, hope for tomorrow, but you cannot recall it the way you recall yesterday. This asymmetry is not an accident. It is a reflection of the deep, quiet architecture of your brain, shaped by the same arrow of time that guides the cosmos. To understand this, imagine your brain as a vast, living library. Every moment you experience writes a new entry somewhere inside it. These entries are not words on paper, but patterns. Delicate shifts in the strengths of connections between neurons, small changes in chemistry, subtle rearrangements of electrical activity. Every sensation you feel leaves a trace, like a footprint pressed lightly into soft sand. These footprints accumulate as you walk through life, forming a path that leads from your earliest days to this very moment. But notice where the footprints lie, always behind you. The sand ahead is smooth. There are no impressions from future steps. The brain can only record what has already happened, because the physical patterns that store memory can only be created by events that have already left their mark. This simple truth is the first reason why we remember the past instead of the future. Memory is a physical process, and the physical world obeys the arrow of entropy, the natural tendency for processes to leave traces behind them but not ahead. To make this idea gentler, imagine taking a photograph with an old camera. Light reflects off a scene, passes through the lens and imprints itself onto film. The film changes chemically, storing an image of what was. You cannot take a picture of a moment that has not yet happened, because the light from that moment has not reached you. Memories work the same way. They are imprints of past experiences, imprints made possible because the events have already occurred, sending their signals into your senses and shaping your brain. Another way to see this is to imagine a painter working on a canvas. Each brush stroke adds texture, colour and meaning. Once applied, the paint dries and becomes part of the picture. The strokes ahead, the ones the painter has not yet made, do not exist. The canvas does not remember them because they have not touched it. Your brain, like that canvas, changes only when the moment touches it. The past leaves marks, the future does not. But the story goes deeper, down into the rhythm and flow of neural activity itself. The brain does not simply store the past, it weaves the present out of tiny fragments of time. Scientists sometimes describe this using terms like integration windows, which we can soften into something more intuitive. Your brain gently gathers small pieces of time, fractions of a second, and blends them into a single moment of awareness. It is like looking at the world through a camera with a slightly long exposure. The past few milliseconds are still glowing inside your perception, even as the next milliseconds arrive. Because of this blending, your present moment is not razor thin. It is slightly thick, slightly rich, infused with the echo of what just happened and the anticipation of what might come. This thickness helps explain why you can smoothly track the motion of a falling leaf or the rhythm of a friend's voice. Without blending, your perception would stutter, breaking the world into disjointed frames. Instead, the brain creates a gentle continuity, a flow, by allowing a short slice of the past to linger. Yet even within this blended window, the direction is clear. The brain can stitch together tiny fragments of what has happened, but it cannot blend in fragments of what has not yet occurred. This is because the signals that form perception always travel from your senses into your brain, not the other way around. Light, sound, touch, all carry information forward in time. They cannot arrive before the event that produces them. If you imagine your brain's activity as a stream of patterns, you'll notice something subtle. These patterns have a natural direction, like the current in a river. When neuroscientists analyze brain signals, they find that the flow of activity is easier to recognize forward than backward. In other words, if they reverse the order of the patterns, something feels wrong, like playing a movie backwards. This built-in directionality is another sign of the brain's internal arrow of time. It reflects the underlying physical truth that signals leave traces behind them, never ahead. In everyday life, you can feel this arrow whenever you try to recall an event. The memory arrives in a specific order, one moment tied to the next, footsteps leading backward along the path of your life. You never recall future events arranged in the same way because the future has no pathway yet. Your brain has not made the physical changes required to store it. The records simply do not exist. This connection between memory and entropy becomes clearer when you think of the physical world. A footprint on sand is a record of a step. A crack in a broken cup is a record of its fall. A photograph is a record of light that once touched a sensor. The universe is full of records, but every record points backward. None points forward. The brain is part of the same universe, governed by the same principles. If the cosmos cannot store traces of what has not yet happened, neither can the brain. And yet, despite all this, the future still feels vivid in its own way. You can imagine it, predict it, hope for it. The brain builds these pictures not by reaching into the future, but by rearranging fragments of past experience, crafting possibilities that might unfold. These imagined futures help you plan, prepare, and explore. But they do not carry the weight of memory. They lack the physical roots that give memories their solidity. So your sense of time, the feeling of movement, the weight of history, the openness of tomorrow, arises from a simple combination of processes. The universe leaves traces behind it. The brain records those traces. Perception blends small slices of the past into a continuous present. Imagination leans gently into the future. And somewhere in this mix, awareness creates the illusion of a one-way flow. Whether all times exist together or not, your experience must pass through this one-way filter. You occupy the present, interpret the past, and guess at the future because of how your brain, and the universe that shaped it, handles information. Time, for you, is not merely a dimension or a coordinate. It is a lived experience shaped by memory, entropy, and consciousness. And now, having explored how physics and the brain join hands to shape your sense of time, we find ourselves standing before a much older, deeper question. One that philosophers have asked for centuries. If this is how we experience time, then what kinds of time might actually exist? If you imagine walking through a quiet garden at dusk, you might notice how each step reveals a little more of the path ahead. The stones beneath your feet appear only as you reach them. The air feels different with each turn. Flowers that were hidden a moment earlier now lie in full view, glowing softly in the fading light. This way of experiencing the world, one moment at a time, each step unfolding only as you take it, is the way most people naturally think about time. It feels as though the past has disappeared behind you. The present is all that exists and the future is yet to be revealed. This view in philosophy is sometimes called presentism, though we don't need the name to understand it. It is simply the idea that only the present moment is truly real. Presentism aligns closely with our intuitions. When you think back to your 5th birthday, you know the party happened, but it doesn't feel like it exists anymore. It feels like a memory, a trace left behind. And when you think about your 50th birthday, it feels like a possibility, an idea, a moment that has not yet been born. The present moment, the one you are living right now, feels like the only solid ground. Everything else seems to belong either to shadows or to dreams, but imagine now that you step off the garden path and climb a small hill. From the top, you look down at the garden in its entirety. You see the path you've already walked. You see the path you haven't yet reached. You see places you passed earlier, still there, unchanged. You see places you will walk later, already part of the landscape even though your feet have not touched them. From this higher perspective, the whole garden exists at once, not only the part where you are standing. This second way of seeing is a gentle way to understand what some philosophers and physicists call eternalism, the idea that the past, present and future all exist together, like places on a map. You experience only one place at a time, but the others do not vanish. Just as the hallway behind you in your home continues to exist even while you stand in the kitchen, the moments behind you and the moments ahead may have their own quiet existence, waiting for your consciousness to arrive. To make this even softer, imagine a beautiful park map printed on a large sheet of paper. The picnic meadow is in the lower left corner. The bridge crosses a river toward the top. A winding trail circles a lake. If you are walking in the meadow, that is your present. But the rest of the map is not imaginary. It is simply not where you are right now. Eternalism suggests that time might be like that map, a complete landscape of moments. The past is the meadow you walked through earlier. The future is the bridge or the lake that you may visit later. The present is simply the point on the map where your awareness is currently resting. This perspective can feel strange because it conflicts with the deeply rooted feeling that time flows, that the future is open and the past is closed. Eternalism does not deny that feeling. Instead, it says the feeling may come from the way consciousness moves through time, rather than from the structure of time itself. In this view, your awareness is like a flashlight in a dark room. Wherever the beam shines becomes now. But everything else in the room still exists, even though it is not illuminated. One of the most compelling hints in favour of the eternalist view comes from Einstein's insight that there is no single, universal now. Two observers moving differently through the universe may disagree about whether two distant events happen at the same moment. If now can shift from one observer to another, then the present begins to look less like a fundamental feature of reality and more like something personal, something shaped by where you are and how you move. And if the present is personal rather than universal, then the idea of a single time flowing forward for all beings becomes harder to defend. In this sense, eternalism fits comfortably with the woven fabric of space-time we explored earlier. If time is another dimension, like space, then moments might be like locations, different but equally real. You experience them one at a time, not because they come into existence one by one, but because that is how your consciousness travels along its path. Still, eternalism is not the only view, and many people find presentism far more natural. Presentism preserves the feeling that the future is open and that true change is happening. It aligns with the emotional experience of watching a sunset fade, or feeling a child grow older, or noticing how your thoughts and beliefs shift from year to year. It reflects the way we talk and act, as if the past is gone forever and the future is a blank page we have not yet written on. This tug of war between the two views is like comparing two photographs. One from eye level, where you see only what is immediately in front of you, the other from above, where you see the entire scene at once. Both are truthful, both capture real aspects of reality, but they tell different stories. Presentism reflects your lived experience, the unfolding of time as a sequence. Eternalism reflects a more structural view, time as a landscape where all events have their place. As gentle as these ideas are, they lead naturally to a deeper question. If all the places on the map exist, does that mean your path through the garden is already set? If the entire timeline exists at once, where does your sense of choice come from? And if the future is just another region of the map, what does it mean to take responsibility for your steps? This question, the question of free will, has puzzled thinkers for centuries, and now, having walked softly through both presentism and eternalism, we find ourselves standing at the edge of that very question. If the map is already printed, what does it mean to choose where you walk? And if the map is still being drawn, what does that say about the nature of time itself? If you imagine time as a long field stretching into the distance, you might picture yourself walking through it step by gentle step. Behind you lies a trail of footprints, the choices you've made, the moments you've lived, the memories that have settled into the ground like soft impressions in damp soil. Ahead of you, the field is still untouched, a smooth expanse that seems to invite any number of possible steps. This is the feeling at the heart of free will, the sense that the future has not yet been shaped, and that your choices can carve paths where none existed before. But this feeling sits uneasily beside the ideas we explored earlier, especially the map-like view of time suggested by eternalism. If all moments, past, present and future, exist together like towns on a landscape, then the future might already be there, waiting for you. And if that is so, can your choices truly matter? Or are they simply events unfolding along a line already drawn? To navigate these questions gently, we can turn to another way of imagining time, the growing block picture. Instead of visualizing the whole timeline as a completed map or a fully printed book, imagine time as a diary that continues to write itself as you live. Every page you've already written, the past, is real and fixed. The page you're writing now, the present, is also real, ink settling into the paper as you breathe and move. But the pages ahead of you are blank, not yet part of the diary. They have no writing, no shape, no story. In this view, the future does not yet exist in any form. It is open, and your choices determine the words that will appear. The growing block idea offers something emotionally satisfying. It keeps the solidity of the past while preserving the openness of what comes next. It allows you to imagine that time is real and unfolding, not already laid out. You're not flipping through a finished book, you're holding the pen. One of the strongest voices behind this vision is physicist Lee Smolin, who suggests that time is not an illusion or a passive dimension. Instead, he argues that time is the engine of creation. In his view, the universe is not a timeless sculpture but a living process. The future has no existence until it happens. The present is the place where new things come into being. The past is the archive of everything that has already settled. This perspective treats the present as genuinely special, a frontier between what has been and what has not. Smolin's idea offers a way to preserve free will without denying the beautiful structure of space-time we have explored. If time is fundamentally creative, then your choices are genuinely part of the universe's unfolding. They do not sit on a predetermined track. They help shape what comes next. But even if one accepts a view where the future is open, the question of free will is still subtle. After all, the brain and the universe operate according to physical laws. If the neurons that fire when you make a decision follow the same principles as planets and atoms, then some wonder whether your choices could truly have been different. It is a question that can easily become tangled if we push too far into abstraction. For tonight we can approach it more softly. Imagine standing at a fork in a quiet forest path. To your left lies a familiar trail, one you've walked many times. To your right is a path you've never taken. Both paths exist. Both are possible. You have reasons for choosing one or the other, your energy, your curiosity, your memories, your hopes. These reasons do not remove your freedom. They shape it. They are part of what makes your choice meaningful. And when you finally step onto one trail, the other does not feel predetermined or impossible. It simply becomes the path you did not take. Free will, in everyday life, might be less about defying physical law and more about acting within a world where the future is genuinely open, at the scale that matters to you. Whether or not time is a fully completed map in some deeper sense, you experience it as a sequence of live, unfolding decisions. Your consciousness moves forward like the beam of a lantern, illuminating a little bit of the path ahead, and your choices shape which part of the landscape becomes your present. Even if the entire universe had a block-like structure, one where every moment exists somewhere in a vast four-dimensional tapestry, the experience of moving through that tapestry would still be one of genuine decision-making. The fact that a future moment exists in the fabric of space-time would not change the process by which you arrive there. You still choose your steps. You still feel the consequences. You still live your story one breath at a time. The block universe view does not negate the feeling of free will any more than a finished movie reel negates the experience of watching the film unfold. Think of a river flowing through a canyon. The canyon walls exist, carved long ago, but the water still moves freely within them, turning, rippling, eddying in unpredictable ways. Or imagine a melody written on sheet music. The notes exist on the page, but each performance of the melody brings small variations, a different tempo, a gentler touch, a pause held slightly longer. In these metaphors, structure and freedom coexist. The world may have patterns, constraints, and laws, but your experience within it includes room for action, interpretation, and intention. Ultimately, the question of free will depends on how you choose to see yourself in the story of time. If you feel like a character whose lines have been scripted from the beginning, the block universe might seem heavy. But if you feel like a traveller moving through an unfolding landscape with choices that shape your path, then the growing block or time is real view may feel close to your truth. But perhaps the most important insight is this: you do not need a final answer tonight. You live inside time, not outside it. You experience your life through the gentle rhythm of decisions, emotions, and moments. Whether the future exists already or whether it is being written as you go, the way you move through it, the care, the intention, the curiosity, is what gives it meaning. And as we turn toward the next part of our journey, another question appears softly on the horizon. If time is a landscape, and if your consciousness travels through it, then who are you across that landscape? What connects the child you once were, the person you are now, and the one you will become? If you sit quietly for a moment and think about the person you were when you were 5 years old, you might feel a kind of gentle distance. The child you remember, with small hands, wide eyes, and a world full of unfamiliar shapes, feels both familiar and distant. And yet, that child is you. The person you were at 15, standing on the edge of adolescence with hopes and uncertainties. The person you were at 30, perhaps working through challenges or discovering new parts of yourself. The version of you now, listening in the soft glow of the present moment. And the person you will become decades from now. Older, wiser, shaped by experiences you have not met yet. Somehow, all these versions are connected. Strung together, they form the story of your life. But what is the thread that binds them? To explore this gently, imagine the ship of Theseus, an old philosophical riddle about a wooden ship that has its planks replaced one by one over many years. If eventually every plank is new, is it still the same ship? Your body asks a similar question. The atoms that make up your cells are constantly replaced. The molecules in your skin, your blood, your bones, all pass through you like travellers moving through an inn. Over the course of years, your physical materials are almost entirely renewed, yet you feel like the same person. This suggests that identity is not built from the matter you're made of. Instead, it is built from continuity, from the gentle curve of your story as you move through time. Picture your life as a glowing thread stretched across a vast landscape of moments. Each point along the thread corresponds to a different version of you. The child, the teenager, the adult, the listener you are right now. The thread does not break, even as you change. It bends, twists, deepens, adapts. In the language of the block universe, which treats time as a kind of map, this thread is your path through space-time. It connects each moment of your existence like a line drawn through a constellation of stars. But if you prefer the growing block view, where time is a diary still being written, the thread becomes even more intimate. You're not a fixed line laid out from beginning to end. You're a story in progress. Each chapter builds upon the last. Each new moment adds another sentence. The child you were becomes the foundation of the teenager you became, who becomes the adult you are now, who opens the page into your future self. The thread is not something pre-drawn. It is woven as you move. Both metaphors, the map and the story, point to something quietly profound. You're not a single instant. You're a pattern extended across time. Imagine a song played on a piano. You would never confuse one note of the song with the entire melody. A single note cannot carry the emotion, the structure, or the meaning of the whole piece. But when all the notes are played together in sequence, you hear the fullness of the music. Your identity is like that melody. Each version of you is like a note, meaningful in itself but deeply incomplete when isolated. Only when viewed as part of the full sequence, the rising and falling of the tune, do you become whole. This perspective softens the way we think about change. It is easy to look back at earlier versions of yourself and feel disconnected or even critical. But those earlier selves were not mistakes. They were notes in the melody, essential parts of the song that carried you to where you are now. Even moments of confusion or hardship contribute to the arc of your story, shaping your understanding and resilience. You can also imagine identity as a river flowing through a valley. The water at one point is not the same water that passes a moment later, yet the river remains itself, not because of the water, but because of the shape of its path, the way it curves around rocks, the way it widens or narrows. In the same way, you remain yourself not because your atoms stay the same, but because the shape of your mind, your values, and your lived experience develops along a continuous path. You carry echoes of every earlier version of yourself, even as you change. This brings us to something even more delicate. The idea that the past and future might exist in some deeper sense, like locations on a map, can make it tempting to imagine all versions of yourself existing together. The child you were is still part of the landscape. The older person you will become also exists somewhere in that larger structure, even if you have not reached them yet. Your awareness travels from one version to another, giving the illusion of a single moving identity. But in the larger picture, the thread may already be woven. In the growing block or presentist view, the future version of you is not yet real. You will create it step by step. The thread is being spun as you walk, like yarn drawn slowly from a spindle. Your identity is not something preformed. It is a becoming, a gentle unfolding. Yet regardless of which picture you find comforting, the truth remains the same. You are more than a moment. You are an arc, trajectory, a continuous presence that stretches across the years. And this continuity gives meaning to your actions, your memories, your hopes. It allows you to see your life not as a collection of isolated events, but as a living narrative, full of connections that stretch across time. Perhaps the softest way to hold this is to imagine your life as a lantern glowing from within. Every memory, every step, every choice illuminates a different part of the world around you. Over the years, the glow changes shape and colour, but the lantern remains the same. You carry your light forward, illuminating each new moment, and the glow you cast now blends softly with the glow you once cast and the glow you will cast someday. As this session draws to a close, we return to a question that has been quietly waiting for us. If your identity stretches across time, and if the past and future may exist in a larger sense, how should you live in the present? If this moment is simply one point on a long, luminous thread, what does it mean to inhabit it fully, gently, meaningfully? If you imagine your life as a long book, you might picture each moment as a page. Some pages are filled with bright colours, victories, laughter, small joys that glowed for a while. Other pages hold quieter tones, maybe even shadows, difficulties you had to face, choices you regret, moments that shaped you in ways you didn't expect. But no matter how the pages look, you can only ever read one at a time. Your eyes rest on a single sentence, a single breath, a single fragment of the story. This moment, the one you're living right now, is your only doorway into all of time. And so we return to the question that carried us through this whole journey. Are the past and future happening now? Maybe all the pages exist at once, bound in the same book. Maybe only the page beneath your fingertips is truly real. But whichever picture you hold, you are always standing here, in the living, breathing present, with the ability to touch the world only through this moment. This perspective softens something that many people carry: regret. Regret often whispers that the past should have been different, that you should have acted sooner, or spoken more gently, or chosen another path entirely. But everything you did back then was shaped by the information you had, the emotions you felt, the limits you lived within. In physics, we saw that entropy guides the flow of events, nudging the world from order to disorder in a natural direction. In a similar way, your choices were guided by the conditions of your life in that moment: your age, your understanding, your fears, your hopes. The past could not have been something entirely different without changing all the ingredients that shaped who you were then. Understanding this makes regret softer, gentler, not gone, but eased. The past is a page already written, a trace left in the universe like the faint echo of a star. You cannot rewrite that page, but you can understand it, hold it with compassion, and let its lessons guide the pages still blank ahead. Just as entropy gives time a direction, it also gives your life a direction. The accumulation of experiences, memories, and growth. You move forward because you cannot go back, and the place where forward actually happens is the present. The future too becomes less frightening when viewed gently. We've seen that, on the quantum level, the future is a cloud of possibilities, not a single rigid path but many potential directions. When you feel anxious about what is coming, it often feels as though the future has already formed, as if something dark or difficult is waiting for you just beyond the horizon. But in truth, the future has not left any footprints yet. It has no records. It has not been written. Your choices, your kindness, your attention to small things, these shape which possibilities gradually solidify into experience. This is why mindfulness feels so deeply connected to the nature of time. When you breathe gently and draw your attention into the present, you are anchoring yourself in the one place where both influence and peace exist. You cannot shape yesterday. You cannot live tomorrow today. You can only be here, in the delicate, expanding moment that holds the entire weight of your life. If all times exist, then this moment is a cross-section through eternity, a single slice of a vast cosmic tapestry. If only the present exists, then this moment is the entire stage on which your life unfolds. Either way, focusing on your breath, the gentle rise of your chest, the coolness of the air at your nostrils, the soft warmth when you exhale, becomes a way of arriving fully in the only place you can ever truly experience. Mindfulness does not mean ignoring the past or refusing to think about the future. It simply means allowing yourself to return to the present when the past feels heavy or the future feels sharp. It is like sitting quietly beside a river. The water flows. Thoughts drift by. Memories ripple through the mind like reflections on the surface. Fears about what hasn't happened yet float past like fallen leaves. Mindfulness is the simple act of watching those ripples without drowning in them. This gentle perspective even invites you to imagine time travel in a softer, symbolic way, not through machines or wormholes, but through awareness. When you remember a moment deeply, vividly enough that you feel its emotion again, you are visiting a room in your past, not literally, but emotionally, mentally. When you imagine a future moment with clarity and hope, you are reaching forward into possibility. These forms of time travel do not break physics, but they shape your inner experience. They allow you to understand yourself as a being stretched across time. Some philosophers and physicists have wondered whether, in a block universe, advanced civilizations might someday peek at other moments the way we flip through pages of a book. Perhaps they could observe the past or future like scenes in a gallery. Even if this remains forever hypothetical, the idea offers comfort. Your life may be a single shimmering thread in a larger tapestry that endures beyond your awareness. You are part of something vast, even if you can only see one moment at a time. And as we reach the quiet end of this long journey, perhaps the simplest truth is also the gentlest. Whether or not the past and future are happening now, your experience of them always comes through this present moment, this breath, this heartbeat, this soft awareness settling inside you. The present is not small. It is where your memories rest. It is where your choices rise. It is where your future begins. So take one more slow breath. Let your shoulders loosen. Let the world soften around you. Tonight, you are allowed to rest. Time can flow quietly on its own.